Welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming out. This is such a beautiful place. Wanted to introduce you to Herb Elliott and his wife Paula over there.
My soulmate.
They're the founders of Paleo Park. They discovered it. Herb's going to explain to you how he did that and show. Well, he's been having these artifacts here, so I'll let him go for it.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I did write me some notes down there because when you become my age, you've got to have notes or otherwise you forget what you're going to be talking about. And the first thing I would try to give you here is like a geographic description of this area. When you go back to the Pleistocene period, the Ice Age type, when we get back to 14,000 years, which we are now here in this particular site, the western coastline of the state of Florida extended as much as 120 miles further west, which really relates to the simple fact that many, and most probably of the archaeological sites are underwater out there someplace. And so when you find something inland like this, it's significant, because I know the Dr. Estabrook that did the opening here, he was talking about I think he said something like 30,220 some archaeological sites in the state of Florida. And he said paleo sites are very significant because there are not that many of them. And he was standing right over there. In fact, it's on the he's on the website here when he was making his presentation. He said out of 30,328 sites in the state of Florida, what we have here ranks in the top 5. It is a significant site because of the amount of paleo artifacts that were found. And like when Paula Kay and I started collecting and this sort of thing, you know, a lot of this stuff I didn't recognize because I'd always done my collecting as a young person in the Ohio Valley, mid-Ohio Valley. And in fact, I just found a book here not too long ago where the fellow put this together. Ed Hyde was a friend of mine. We were officers of the Blennerhassett chapter of the West Virginia Archaeological Society. And he put this book together, and I didn't know it. But I have a whole page in there. And I think, whoa, man, now, hey, I love it. But what I think another thing we would take into consideration here, when we look around us here today, we have trees and palms and everything of this nature, big plants coming out of the ground. But back then, say 14,000 years ago, all we had here was scrub growth, and it was barren. It's kind of like desert land and this sort of thing with small scrub growth. So we didn't have the major things that we have here now. And it's another thought too, is palm trees. We see these palm trees all over the place. Palm trees were brought here by the Spaniards. They came from Spain over here, and of course, you know, they came here, they wasn't 14,000 years ago. So it wasn't that bad at all. The other thing I think is taken into consideration would be the first residents or the first people to occupy this land, paleo. Okay, just imagine, okay, today, you don't have the clothing you have, what we're wearing here today. You don't have that clothing. We don't have Publix markets. We don't have Walgreens and CVS pharmacies. You don't have clothing stores. Everything you have comes from what surrounds you. Animal, hide, skinned out, make clothing out of it, use some of it to make tops for tents and things of this nature. And these people had to be very creative to live and survive as long as they did. And like the Paleo Indian, from what I have learned from my professional friends, Asian in appearance, a lot of hair, body hair, and I thought about a lot of body hair too. That'd be nice to keep heat in too, but I guess that would be one thing. And the men were the hunters. They were out there killing mastodon, the woolly mammoth, the horse. There were horses here at that point in time too, paleo horses. Not paleo horses, but ancient horses. They would kill the food, bring it in. The women were responsible for preparing the food, for using parts of it to build huts, to do whatever they could with what was left over from the matter that the men had found. And the women also would use some of that material for lodge preparation. If maybe I had a Girl Scout group out here one time, and we built a hut right over here, all out of palm fronds and natural material we found in here. I mean, they did a beautiful job. I had guys in later, they couldn't put one together. And I thought, these gals know what they're doing. I guess maybe that's why they were used by the paleos, as people to build their lodgings. Now, how did these people get here? Okay. We know from what we've learned, they came across Sebring Straits, the land bridge between northeastern Europe and Alaska. At that point in time, say 16,000 years ago, that land bridge was as much as 125 miles wide, a bridge, Earth. Then they come across this into Alaska as we know today. Then they followed what they called the Trail of the Megafauna, large animal. The large animal had to follow water to survive. And it's a natural path because water for the animals, hunters behind the animals, getting the animals for food, clothing, this sort of thing. And if you look at the map of the United States and come across from the west coast all the way to the east coast and look at the Missouri, Mississippi, all the rivers and everything like this, and you will find, as I found in this book that I got from Ed Hyde, that that's where you're going to find where the first residents. Now the thing in this book kind of blew my mind because when we first turned in the material here, it was dated to be about 12,000 years old. But I have a piece in there that's found right there in the Mid-Ohio Valley near where I lived that was 14,000 years old, paleo. So again, Trail of the Megafauna, high a river, they followed it. And where I lived there was above the river, the big bottom down here, and then there was a terrace up here, and the houses were up here and this sort of thing. And that's also what was there back in the prehistoric days. And that's where the artifacts were found, were on these terraces. In fact, many years after we left West Virginia, near where I lived when I first came back in the service as a rental piece of property, where I started looking for artifacts, about 200 yards from the house I lived in, they found the remains of a mastodon. And I'm thinking, good Lordy, I walked right over that thing and I didn't know it was there. Okay, Paleo Park. Paula Kay and I, this is my wife over here, we were the first residents in Heritage Pines. We moved here December the 7th, 1998, and as I often say, may that day live in infamy. And they were just starting, they're building the golf course, and like you look right over here at this retention area. Okay, what they did over here, they went down as much as 12, 15 feet in this upper end below normal land surface. And they got into the old cultural levels. And they started churning out this old paleo material. So, having had, past experience as an amateur looking for artifacts and this sort of thing, I went to the management and asked Ron McGinnis, who was one of the sales reps here, and he said, yeah, he understood that people here before had found artifacts. Then, following that little discussion with Ron, one day I noticed a young guy coming into our property, and that's before we had the fence up and everything like this, and he was looking for artifacts. And so I went over and I encountered him, and nice young man and everything like this, and I said, how you doing, buddy, and everything? He said, oh, fine. I said, you finding anything? He said, no, I'm not over there yet. But he didn't say what over there meant. He was back on the eastern side over here. And, but he was looking for artifacts. So that kind of ignited interest on my part. And so Paula Kay and I started walking around on the grounds. And over the period 1999 to 2004 and a half, we probably covered several hundred miles in here walking, looking for artifacts. What we found, this was the focal point, because 80% of the material we found was within 100, 150 yards, what we're looking at right here. So this had to be the focal point, this sinkhole. And the sinkhole we're looking at today, if we went back, 10,000 years, Originally, it probably was somewhere around 140 feet deep. You get down where the aquifer level is. And I put that date on it simply because of wells that were drilled here for irrigation purposes, how far down they went before they hit the aquifer. And of course, it causes a cave-in in that aquifer level to let the earth go in where you get sinkholes of this nature. So I would say right now this pond is something like 237, 240 feet in diameter. And we had divers out here, Jill and her husband Heinrich. They worked for National Geographic, and they were out here in 2001, I'm sorry. And they did a dive and everything. So when they finished the dive, they determined that this thing was between 25 and 30 feet deep. So, you know, you say, wait a minute, you know, it's got to be deeper than that. But then if you think about something as old as this is, over the years, with the leaves falling from trees, with erosion from the banks and things of this nature, it begins to fill up. So you give it 10, 12, 15,000 years, you know, hey, it's not going to be like it was in the beginning. It's going to be a lot more shallow and this sort of thing. So that made sense. That, yeah, takes somebody dumb as me to figure it out. But. Now, another thing too is when we first had this all evaluated, this book is what was done by the professionals up there. They were suggesting perhaps somewhere around 12,000 years old, this site. Okay, and hey, what do I know? I agree with them, and that's based on what they had found up to that point in time. It had been turned in by other people. And so everything remained that way. We're figuring it was about 12,000-year-old site. In fact, we had to change the sign until just north of here, where the Osceola River crosses, just north of Perry, Georgia, the Osceola River crosses there about 8 years, well actually it's longer than that, about 12 years ago, and between 12 and 8 years ago, they did an investigation up there, Page Landing site, and they found I've got a picture of it in there, a piece of mastodon tusk that was about 5.5, 6 feet long. It had engravings in it. They did a radiocarbon dating on that tusk piece, and it dated at 14,500 years. And newspaper articles right in there, and I'm thinking, wow, wait a minute. That's only about 120 miles up the road, right? Now, it's not going to take people, paleo or anybody else, 2,000 years to get 120 miles down the road. So that kind of updated the age of what we have here to more being around the 14,000-year-old site. Well, okay, Paula Kay and I, you know, husband and wife thing sometimes can be extremely competitive. And we'd go out there and we'd be walking and we'd be looking and everything like this, you know. And Paula Kay would say, oh, Herb, look what I found. And I'm thinking, what the hell is she doing over there? Wait a minute, I should be over there and she should be over here because I'm not finding anything. But it became, like I say, it was almost a competitive thing that it was a 50-50 deal. She was finding half as much as I was, and she became very, very well acquainted with the type of material we're looking for. And like I know I had other guys that went out with me on occasion, just take a walk and see what's going on, and they'd walk over this stuff. You know, these are all what's called the expedient pieces, and expedient meaning flaked off in the tool making process and made the nice looking tools we end up with. But she became very acquainted with the type of material and this sort of thing. So, hey, it became a very productive situation with two people instead of one. And we worked on that for 1999 to 2004. And I had a massive collection in the house. And what I wanted to do, my first thoughts were it would be nice if we had a nice display piece up in the clubhouse. A safe display piece, because like I said, there's some points in the pieces in the one I know is worth $750. So you want to put it in a protected spot. I couldn't really get the interest I needed to get it displayed up there. And so finally we decided, after trying many times, I went to the library, I went over to Dade City, went to the library down there, tried to get in the community to get a safe display area, you know, to put this material. Couldn't get it. So we ended up going to Tallahassee. We go up to Tallahassee and we meet with the archaeological department up there, and Louis Tazar and Dr. Creamer, and they're looking at this, all this material and everything like this, and Paula Kay told me that this Dr. Creamer, he had tears rolling down his cheeks when we offered to contribute it to the state. Now, it's up there. All the bags are numbered. All the material that was turned in, they have bag numbers on it, and the material's there. Paula Kay and I have, over the past several years now, we have seen in the newspaper several articles where some of the articles we turned in, pieces we turned in, have been used for educational purposes. We saw that Starkey Park down there, where a couple of the pieces was in the paper, beautiful piece, you know, and this sort of thing. So, hey, it's doing just fine. But the other, probably the end of that story is, if we were to, I'm trying to think of the lady's name now, it's in charge of the archaeological department up there, and I have talked with her, and she would be willing to give us a representation of all the culture levels from our collection if we wanted to go up there and get it and bring it back down here and put it in a display piece for our clubhouse up there. But I don't know whether that's ever going to happen or not. Let me see if I got anything else there. Okay, that's what I call site protection. This site is protected under the state of Florida. Encroachment, digging, anything of that nature is outlawed. You cannot do it. The only thing that could be done of that nature would be with professional archaeological help. And that is not me. I'm not a professional archaeologist. I'm an amateur. I always said protector, not a collector. But it is a protected site, and if we get anything, you know, that you know, we think we should look into, we have to have approval from the state of Florida, which is the way it should be. Now, another thing I know, Deb and Bob Tribby have kind of, oh yeah, there, hey Deb, I'm 86 years old, so it's getting to the point, you know, where I'm running out of gas. And I have to fill my tank a lot more often than I used to. But
You're never going to run out of gas.
Bless you, my sweetheart. But Deb and Bob have volunteered to come over and really take over and take care of this place. And I mean, that's a gift from God. I really appreciate it. And they have done what we'll do when we get finished here with all this BS I'm giving you. Bob and Deb is going to take a walk around and show you some of the things they've contributed here over the past several months. In fact, I came up this morning, and it's the first time I've been up here, and I saw the nice frame they put around the sign out there. Heck, God, where'd that come from, you know? Then Deb and Bob come over a little bit later, you know, and she said, what do you think? Did you see? I said, yeah, where'd this come from? We got it. I'm saying, well, you can't pay for anything like that. She said, we did it. Environmental committee paid for it. So that's a nice thing. We like that. And I know another project they were working on is like the fencing right here in the front, okay, is the possibility of getting an aesthetic fencing, not to go away around, okay, but get an aesthetic fencing, go from that side down and probably curl around right about to here. Just something of aesthetic nature, you know. And I know she has made an effort, Bob has made an effort here just in the recent past to try to get some help on that. And it hasn't happened yet, but I'll guarantee you with their perseverance, it will eventually happen. And I think about, you know, we have spent something around $170,000 budgeted, I guess, for plantings in the front and on the medians coming down Grand Club Drive and everything like that. And that's done for aesthetic purposes too. And so one of these days, they're going to be successful in driving a nail in that board. So do I have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that this land used to go out 120
100
miles.
to 120 miles
Gulf.
further on.
What, right now, how far are we from the Gulf right now?
I'd say you're about 2.5 miles, 2 miles from here.
2.5 miles.
Yeah.
It used to go out 120 miles.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
And that's why I was thinking too, you know, a lot of the archaeological sites are out there probably buried underwater. In fact, I know they're out there buried underwater. And
Herb,
ooh,
my husband and I live almost on the far southeastern corner, so as far as you can go east and south in Heritage Pines, and we just had it charted for insurance purposes. We're 3.8 miles from the closest water.
yep, that's all right.
Okay,
It's not
that's
that
closer
far.
than I
Yep.
thought. I
Not
thought
that
we
far.
were maybe.
had a hurricane coming this way, was the flood level was up to 19, where they said evacuation area was west of 19. So we're at about, I think the clubhouse up here is about 34 feet above sea level. And where I live down here is around 24, 26 feet, down the slope a little bit. And that's another thing about the initial geography in whatever this area. Topographically, if you were to come back here 14, 15,000 years ago, stand where we're standing and look around, you would see a lot difference in the topography and everything of this nature. I know one of the areas where we found material that was kind of interesting was right over here about where number 3 green is, and that was an elevated area before they did the golf course. And we found material over there that had been fired because the material was blackened by heat, and some of it was red by heat. But that was a campsite, and there were artifacts in surrounding that area, small artifacts, a lot of stuff like this where they made tools and everything like that, you know. So that was a higher elevation, and the elevation to, if you go out there and go up Spring Hill Drive, you get up to Cobblestone, you go up a hill there, that's an elevation up there, which is interesting because the ancient people would select higher elevations for the same reason, you know, we would stay out of flood areas today. And these people had to depend on a lot of common knowledge to protect a safe place to live. But
Herb, have you ever investigated the sinkhole over on number 1?
number 1, okay, we have 3 ancient sinkholes in here. This is one of them. Number 1 is the other one, and the one on Fairway Green. Those are the 3 ancient sinkholes. Yeah, that one over there has a 63-degree slope. I mean, you need a rope tie on the fence when you get down there, so when you back up, you can get up the hill. But that is an ancient sinkhole. I found some material close in near proximity from where that sinkhole is down toward where the green is, number 1 green. Yeah, I picked up a few artifacts in there. And over at Fairway Green, the one over there, yeah, saw a few artifacts in conjunction with that little sink too. But nothing compared to what we have here. This was a big one, yeah. But those are all ancient sinkholes. How now, I mean, I know the water temperature of the one down on Fairway Green was running about 8 degrees cooler in October, November, December than this one, which meant it was still directly connected with the aquifer. And so they had a cooler water temperature. This one up here, when I first started looking at this one up here, it was loaded with trash. Old wheels, tires, refrigerators, ranges, ovens, and everything of this nature. It was loaded. So I met a guy named Chris Sajak from Swiftmud, and we were talking about it, you know. He says, tell you what I'll do. He said, I can get that out of there for you. So Swiftmud came down, took out 7 truckloads out of that sinkhole to the junk yard. Over on Fairway Green, they went down there and they cleaned out, not that much, they cleaned out probably about a truckload of material. Came up here, we looked at this one. Of course, at that point in time, it already had the people I told you about before, Jill and Heinrich, her husband, to do the dive. Didn't see a lot of stuff there. But when they did their dive and everything else, out here about, 25 feet out from the bank is a 1976 Chevrolet Custom truck pickup. Has 83 license plates on it. And I know Bill Clark. Bill used to work, helps us out a lot in here. And but Bill tried to get the VIN number off of it and everything like this to find out ownership. They couldn't get ownership, so the truck's still out there. And the reason it's still out there is because Swiftmud said, look, that truck's been there since 1983 for sure, okay? And so we're talking 17, and by that time, another 10 years, 27 years it's been there. So any fuel or any gasoline, oil, or anything like that has cleaned out, and it's clean. Now it's a great spawning place for fish. And I know when we were moving the fence out right up here, speaking of fish, one of the gentlemen who was working there, you know, he says, could I come in and drop my hook here one of these days, you know, would you guys mind? And Gary Wynn was with me down here. And I said, what do you think, Gary? And Gary said, you know, if you're just going to drop a hook, catch and release, let him do that, you know. He's a nice guy and everything like this. We told him, yeah. That was a Friday. So I was up here the next morning, Saturday morning, and he was right down there on his bank, and he had probably his son with him, just a little guy, about 8, 9 years old, you know. people, he's throwing her out there, you know, and he bringing her in. And all at once, by God, he let out a big yell, you know, and I looked over there in that pole, ding, like this, 26-inch bass. The thing was like this. He pulled that out, a huge. That was loaded. I'm sure it's still loaded with bass and brim. Why I think it's loaded because Wayne Johnson, one of my neighbors, he likes to fish. And so we got permission from the clubhouse, general manager, to come down here, use barbless hooks, take fish out of here and transfer it to some of the other water areas. So if you get fish in there, you're going to get birds coming in. So we want to spread the bird population.
Hey Herb, you had a question over here, gentlemen.
Yep, Herb, as you were describing what happened here 12, 14,000 years ago, do you have any idea what the encampment would have looked like or how big it was?
Well, okay. What you got to think about when you talk about that, Bob, is the material you would have to use to build these things. It's like lean-tos. Okay, now, when I was telling you about, we had the guys up here and girls that we cut the poles to build the straps and everything like this, and then we took it and weaved the palm fronds in it. This is the way they had to do that. And I would say, the way I would like it is a lean-to, where you can take a lean-to and build your poles up like this, okay? And then you can weave your material in and on top of it. And the same way, if you want to make it larger, you could take two like this and lean them together and, you know, use whatever material. They didn't have palm fronds. They would have to take this old scrub material and mostly animal skins. When they get the animal skins, that's why animals were so valuable to these people. Everything in that animal was usable, probably including bone matter. But
How large would the group here have been?
how large was
An
it?
area, I mean.
That's difficult to say. Depending on the number of people, and I think they traveled in groups, probably no more than 50 people in a group. I don't think it'd be any more than that. I think as they progress and you get from a Paleo period into the early, middle, and late Archaic period, then they began to colonize a little bit and grow out. Yeah. But
It'd be nice to know more. You know, I wish we could go back and get that information and have all the, have a photo. Have all those answers.
Or a drone.
Be really cool.
There's some information on our website. If you go to the Heritage Pines website and you go to social activities and come down to Paleo Park, there is some information there about Paleo Indian age. And of course, if you Google Paleo Indian age, you can find a lot of information too.
And Herb has a website that is a thorough coverage of everything that we've done here.
And as far as
He has
Paleo
business
Indians
cards.
concerned, you know, again, we think about what they look like and this sort of thing, okay? And some of the best descriptions, and some are more recent, have come from over around Vero Beach on the East Coast, because there's a major archaeological site over there now, paleo site they've been working on for about 7 years. And they did find some burial matter, bone matter, which wasn't complete skeletons or anything like this, you know. And the best guess is that these people, the male, I would say probably average somewhere around 5 feet tall, maybe a little taller, but not much taller than that. Average age back in that time was expected to be somewhere in mid-40s to mid-50s. Women not as old, didn't live as long as men did, but I would say 45 to 50 probably would be pretty much of a good scale to think about the age of the people.
Places on this earth at that age, still,
Amen.
people still live to that short age.
That's for sure. But I would like to extend my appreciation to Bob and Deb.
Herb, I got a question. What happened with the fish?
They are there.
No, you stopped your story in the middle.
Oh, no, I did.
Ask him that you could go fish.
But the idea about the fishing, Dwayne and I came up there, he had a couple poles, we came up there going to do some barbless hooks on fishing, you know, and we started going out there, you know, We spent more time taking the
I
fish
got
off
one
the hook than we were
Oh, did
fishing.
you?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
So I told Dwayne, I
did
said,
that.
you do the
I did
fishing and
that
I'll
whole-
take the
Oh,
fish
did
off
you?
the hook.
Oh,
okay?
sorry.
And we were fishing on that bank over there. And so in an hour and 15 minutes, we caught 58.
Wow.
Wow.
We kept the small ones like this to transfer to these other ponds around here. But
What species? What fish were they?
brim and brim, not catfish, bass and brim. And just the other day we were up here, and I know Deb and Bob saw it, some dead fish in the water. So there is a project right now, I think, that's been budgeted and everything else, is to build a swale wall on that side,
French
drain, to divert the water into 15A and 15C. Okay, this is 15B here. And that'll take the water from running off the golf course where you got pesticides, insect killers and that sort of thing, fertilizers coming into the water. And that's obviously what happened. I think it happened one time before where we did get some contamination in the water.
Are there that many fish still in there?
Fish? Oh yes.
So if I bring my pole over here and get you to get of them?
I bring a lot of money with you because we're charging $5,000 for anybody's spot.
Got it. It'd be worth
Oh,
it.
one other thing. You know, you see certain things, you know, that from the period. And when I was a kid, I always thought about Tom Lone Ranger and Tonto. Okay, these guys. Tonto always had a bow and arrow, and I thought all the Indians always had bow and arrows. But see, the bow and arrow didn't come around until like they call the Weeden Island period, which only goes back about 1,500, 2,000 years when they did invent the bow. But prior to that, it was spear, like you see here. And I thought, if I were back in that point in time, I'd try to do something that made it a little bit more proficient. And so what I would do, I would take these things, and I'd make them put in my beach plow, 4 or 5 of them. Then I have this little deal right here, I load, okay? And if I see a big mastodon, now you think if you see something coming at you that's about 10 feet tall, you got tusks sticking out there about 7 feet, and you know, hey, you're going to try to get something in him and get out of there real quick, you know. But I'd go on to get up there and get to him and pup him, and when I pulled it away, I still had this, right? And I wanted to reload my gun, I'd take it out there, grab my breech clout and be ready to back again. So I wish I could go back and help those people out a little bit. But, it is a significant site, okay? And that's why I'm so appreciative of Deb and Bob coming over here. And I was up here this morning. I came up this morning, to set a few things up. And I'm here about 5 minutes. Here comes Deb and Bob. My God, what are you doing here? Oh, we have to water. So Deb, they had a walk around, and she's going to take you all for a little walk around the area here, and they can point out some of the things that they've contributed here over a very short period of time.
Before you all go, though, I just wanted to thank you all for coming. I'm Hope Botterbush. I coordinate the workshops that are out here. And I want you to look for our emails that come out from the clubhouse, also in the newsletter, the Pines newsletter. If you have any ideas or you'd like to present something, let me know. I'm in the book, Botterbush. And now Deb and Bob are going to take you on a tour if you'd like to go.
And by the way,
We don't recommend open-toed shoes, though.
No.
No, there are fire ants in here.
Yeah, fire ants, big time.
Anybody can stay and talk to Herb about his collection here, definitely. If anybody wants to walk around and see some of the plants, we're going to go that way.
And by the way, this book is always available up in the pro shop, up at the front desk.
Oh, okay.
Back in the library. This book is back there. If you've got children come in or something like this,